y'all? It's your girl Naya Athena, and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while. It's been a lot going on. It's hard for me to focus on so many things at once because I've been focused on so many other things. But I'm back. I'm back, and I will always be back. So I've seen a lot of different things in the last month. Saw Captain America, the new Captain America in theaters. I also decided to watch Interview with a Vampire on Netflix because I kept hearing little whispers about it, and I'm like, I love me a good vampire series, so I'm like, let me go ahead and watch that. And that's what we're gonna get into today. I've also been watching Justice League, like the animated version, just because like I love to brush up on my Marvel skills. Like I need to, especially with that Captain America that just came out. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know too much, and you would think I would know more because Captain America is like so intertwined with Marvel, but I really don't even know too much about Captain America, and like especially the new one because he's the black one. Hello. But I think he has something to do with Winter Soldier, which I also have seen multiple times, but just never like computed, I guess. I don't know, but we gonna get into that a little later. But we talking about Interview with a Vampire today because I'm gagged. Like, I didn't expect it to be that good. I was like, oh. And of course, it's based off of a book series. I think it's a series. It's based off of a book. So let's get right into it. So boom, we literally start the scene out with this beautiful but peculiar looking character. His name is Louis de Poix or something like that. I don't know. I'm not French, but his name is Louis. And he's obviously a man of color, and he got these bright eyes, and so he's talking to this other man who is, you know, an older guy, seems a little bit angry that he is old and apparently dying, like very sick, you know what I'm saying, has a blood disease or some type of disease, but he is interviewing this quote-unquote vampire, and he has tapes that are being recorded of like everything that the vampire is saying, everything that Louis is saying, and pretty much just his story of how he became who he is, right? Now, I will say, I did sense a little bit of, you know, reality tied into this series just off the simple fact because they were like, oh, the year 2000. He was like, the Louis literally says, oh, my last kill was in 2000. And I'm just like, oh, like, that's pretty recent. So I always have to get into my conspiracy bag when I think about Interview with a Vampire, just off the simple fact of like, art imitates life, and they put stuff right in our face just to prepare us for what might come down the pipeline. So I'm gonna just leave that there. But yes, we start out, he is basically walking this man through his life and what era he's from. So he's from like early 1900s, 1906, something like that. This dude was a pimp who was the only black man in New Orleans who had a street that he would run, and he would kind of run with the big dogs. But obviously, early 1900s, racism, so he faced his own issues, but he was also able to pretty much have a successful host role. Hello. And it's very interesting, like, to see, you know what's so funny? You know what's so funny about these vampire films? They always mention New Orleans, don't they? They always mention New Orleans. That's why I'm telling y'all, like, New Orleans is such a suspicious, such an interesting place, okay? That's all I'm gonna say about that. But yes, the dude is from New Orleans. So he talks about his life and, you know, basically what he was in his human life, his family, his brother was mentally, I don't know what exactly was wrong with his brother, but I just think that his brother might have gone through something traumatic, like mentally, like his brain, because his brother was kind of known to be like the weird, you know, outspoken, but like, you know, outburst type of guy, versus his sister, who was like more so, you know, the loving caretaker, more understanding sibling. And then, you know, their mother, who they all benefited from his pimping, you know what I'm saying? But they still kind of chastise him, like, okay, we gotta get out of this, or whatever the case. But obviously the family gonna take that money because he was making that money. Okay, so talks about his life and his early life and how he comes to meet this other peculiar looking individual named Lestat. Now, Lestat is a French. Is he French? I think he is. Yeah, he's definitely French. But you can tell he's very well versed. And so he is visiting New Orleans for the first time, visiting the U.S. for the first time, and instantly sets eyes on Louis. So obviously Louis is not expecting much, seeing just, another familiar face, because New Orleans, as we know it and as we have always known it, is a melting pot. So, you got the French, you got the Creole. Creole is literally French, people of color from all over, cultures and stuff. It's a melting pot. So as he comes to meet this Lestat obviously sets his eyes on him. And you can already see that Lestat has these glowing eyes. So you can already see something is like a little off with him. But as they begin to like speak to each other in public situations, he sees that Lestat can actually communicate with him through his mind and kind of slow down time. So it's like if they're sitting at a table with a lot of stuff going on and people talking, he's telepathically talking to Louis while no one else seems to notice it, because it's just one of those abilities that he has. So clearly he knows that this is not a normal human just off of the simple fact of that, but he's not sure what it is. He doesn't know anything about that. As they get to know each other, the story goes on and on of how they become acquainted. But it's pretty clear to me that Lestat was falling in love with Louis. Now, I love me a good queer film. I have not yet actually seen too much queerness in the supernatural film industry. So I'm so happy to be seeing more of it, because I was just like, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that, but I was not disappointed. So, yes, it is a queer series, and I love that. So, obviously with this is a series. So they had about 7 episodes. Each episode is 45 minutes. So I binge watched it. But basically throughout this series, he's basically telling him about his life, how he met Lestat, and Lestat, now mind you, Lestat is a very, very old vampire. So and you can tell I ain't gonna say too much, but I'm gonna just say Lestat very much hunted Louis, even though he, confesses his love to him, like, I love you, I want you to be a vampire like me or whatever, but in a very unorthodox, gruesome, brutal way, because he's a vampire. So, but at the end of the day, he gives him this opportunity to have that type of power, and we're in a time and place where this is a black man who, although has a great amount of power at this point as a pimp, he is still being undermined by his white inferiors. So he obviously is going to take the opportunity to become what Lestat was. So boom, Lestat turns him. They are both vampires at this point, so he has to learn how to be a vampire, I guess. And I really just love how they kind of describe how vampires are in this film, because it's still true to a lot of the stereotypes of okay, we burn in the sun, you will burn. And also I really love the aspect of the eyes, because you can see they look like normal people, but the only indicator is the eyes. The eyes be his eyes are like mine, and then they become this glassy, yellowish, you can just tell they're not from that world. And honestly, I feel like if vampires are real, that is exactly how they look. Normal, but the eyes are the windows to the soul, y'all. I'm just saying. But yes, so halfway through the series, halfway through season 1, he actually expresses how alone he feels as a vampire, because he does end up losing a lot of his family, because, you know, that's just kind of the way it works. You have to leave your human self behind and everything. You can't keep going around your family because you can't control your bloodlust and stuff like that. So he does end up losing his family, which is really hard on him. He tries to cling to his humanity as a vampire. Even as a vampire, like Lestat is far removed from his humanity, so he's very brutal in his approach of being a vampire. However, Louis is very much still attached to that, because he literally took care of his whole family. Like, you know what I'm saying? He's probably been through so much just to get to that point to sustain that. So he tries to hold on to it, and honestly, it's easier for him because, like I said, y'all, he's a pimp. Like, all his work get done at night anyway, so it kind of like works out for him for a while. But he still expresses how lonely he is, even though Lestat is like, well, I'm your lover, but he's like, well, that's not enough, you know? So after a very crazy outburst that he has because of the racism that is going on in New Orleans at that time, he literally like makes a huge statement, causes a huge kind of like war. I would say civil war low-key in New Orleans between the races, because of something that he does out of anger, which, I mean, personally for me, I would say it was rightfully so, but it was a little bit much. So that causes a lot of black businesses to be destroyed. And so while he's walking through this destruction, he hears the cries of a little girl, and he saves this little girl, even though she's badly burnt. Saves her, begs Lestat to turn her, and he does. So this little girl is probably like 14. So obviously that's his daughter, their daughter, but she calls Lestat uncle. It's weird. I don't understand. I don't know. Well, I guess, I mean, you're gonna be one way forever, so the titles change as you go. But nonetheless, they become a family of sorts, and it goes well until it doesn't. Now, there's an important thing to note, that when a vampire turns another vampire, they lose the ability to read their mind. So Lestat cannot read neither Louis or the daughter's mind. Eventually, everything gets out of hand to a point where, you know, the daughter decides that she's going to kill Lestat, because Lestat is sick in the head. Like, he actually ends up finally, after a lot of reluctance of not being able to, not wanting to talk about his past and how he got turned and stuff, which is really dark, it starts to make sense as to why he is the way that he is, even though the way that he is not good, not beneficial to the two that he just turned, even though he only turns Louis' daughter for Louis. Like, he just loves Louis for some reason. So they kind of actually end up playing him. They formulate this entire plan on how to kill Lestat, their creator. So it's a weird dynamic, because it's like, okay, lover, creator, white superior. I mean, you got to add that in there because he is white. So it's interesting. It's very interesting looking at the different dynamics of how things change and how it's going. And as he's telling this story, we get the occasional interruption from the interviewer, who is, so we get the occasional interruption from the interviewer, who is, like I said, dying. He has some type of condition, but he has risked everything to enter the home of this vampire to get this interview on tape and to then write about it. So we get the occasional interruption from him throughout the story of Louis, and he's very brass, very like, okay, this is old. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's giving very much, this is what the critics will say about your story from a consumer's perspective, which obviously he does have to consider because he's gonna write the story. So he's like, oh, this is a typical like slave master, you know, perspective. This is a typical inferior to superior type of thing, but how is this your lover? How does it, you know what I'm saying? He's asking all of the critical questions that is kind of dangerous when you sit in front of a vampire that has real life ties to this story. So you're like criticizing his life low-key and how people will pretty much view it. And you know, obviously he, in the first few episodes, you can see that the vampire did attack him at some point. And you know, obviously the vampire apologizes, like, oh, sorry for the outburst or whatever. But this man is like fearless. Like, this interviewer is literally fearless, and he's like, whatever, I'm dying anyways, you know what I'm saying? And he's also very like, listen, if I'm gonna write this, it needs to make sense, it needs to sound like a good story or whatever the case, but this is literally this dude's life. So, and honestly, I kind of was agreeing with the interviewer. Like, sometimes when the interviewer be like, oh, this sound like this, I'd be like, yeah, it does. And I like, he low-key was reading my mind too as a consumer. So it's very interesting to like hear his like interruptions and stuff. But you know, as he's in this house, mind you, they're in like this super high-rise apartment. I guess the vampire stays in this super, super, super high-rise apartment where it's like, it's so high in the sky, like you can hear the wind hitting the building, making the building sway. Like, that's how high they are. And it's obviously dark and dim, and you get no sunlight in there, but it's very nice. Like, so obviously this dude got money. So it's just very interesting, like the entire environment that he is in, that he steps into as an interviewer with no care, no fear. Maybe he do got fear, but I don't know. Well, also, I feel like there's an aspect that they don't necessarily touch on, because he says like, oh, I can't remember anyways. So I'm like, okay, does this vampire have the ability to take away his memory of the outburst to make him less fearful? Perhaps. I don't know. But that's never shown in the story of him, or just generally like the present time of them interviewing. So, but I think that's what is insinuated. That's literally what the interviewer is saying. So I'm like, okay, other abilities that we have yet to know about. But yes, they conspire. So Louis and his daughter conspire to kill Lestat. It appears that they have killed him, or at least capacitated him to the highest extent, because Lestat is a very strong vampire. Like, he literally has the ability to, the cloud gift is what they call it, basically the ability to levitate. Every vampire doesn't have that, apparently. But yes, they conspire to kill him, and they do it, but the final step in killing him, they don't appear to reach, because one, Louis is in love with this vampire still, and two, Louis is in love. Like, I think that it's just the like mindset that he was in. That's his creator, that's also his lover, that's also the person who encouraged him to embrace his sexuality. So there's a lot of pieces and parts that play into that. So it's kind of insinuated like, okay, this guy could still be alive, very much so. However, it's so far in the present. This is like 100 years prior, damn near 100 years prior to that. So I'm very interested to see what's gonna happen in the next season, because it then shows that Louis is with another vampire, aka Armand, who is like, appears, so he's presenting as like he serves Louis. So I'm assuming that Louis turned him, but we don't know what it takes to do that, because at first it's very clear that not all new fledgling vampires can turn other people. So it's like, there's still a lot of questions. There's still a lot of questions that I have about the logistics of this series. So, which is why I'm very interested to see what happens in season 2, because it's so like, it's so curious. It's so curious, and they give you like kind of breadcrumbs, like, okay, they can do this, they can't do this, they can do this, da 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 da, depends. So it's like, they definitely give you breadcrumbs, and it's so good, and it's a queer love story. So you really can't beat that. So I would encourage y'all to go watch it. I didn't spoil too much. I feel like I just kind of like grazed over what it's about, but y'all really got to watch it for yourself and just see like the cinematography behind it, and like how it just immediately pulls you in. Like, it literally immediately pulls you in. And so I would rate this series like a 9.5 out of 10, because it definitely, like, from the first episode, from the first 5 minutes, I was like, oh, what are we watching here? What's going on? You know what I'm saying? Definitely a good show. That is all for this video. I am so glad that y'all are still watching me, still keeping up. Make sure you leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, tell a friend, and I will see y'all in the next one. Peace. I don't know if I could manage if my dreams were far too high. Can't be afraid of failure, cause there's always more perspectives. Half full or empty, lessons may correct or leave me less than. It's up to me regardless, so I have to be proactive. And if I never see the end, well then at least I tried. Was trapped inside my thoughts, but now I'm not, so yeah, I'm growing. Sometimes I don't realize it, but I feel like I'm all knowing. Instinctual progression, pay attention, feel the message. And if whatever does me in, well then at least I tried. Time, time, time.